the type to beat up the bad guy when things turn ugly.
My name is Waffles, and I'm a government whistleblower turned political commentator, and this is the last 24 hours in the news. Today is September 6, 2025. It is 7:48 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Here are the top U.S. news highlights for the past 24 hours. A federal appeals court refused to let the administration continue unilateral cuts to billions in foreign aid, ordering funds to move to congressionally authorized projects, a legal check on executive budget actions. This is part of a series of legal battles between the Trump administration and various organizations, as well as Congress, over the control of foreign aid spending. Here's the situation in a nutshell. The administration's actions, President Donald Trump issued an executive order to freeze billions of dollars in foreign aid that had already been approved and allocated by Congress. The administration argued that this was necessary to ensure that the money served U.S. interests and was not being wasted. The lawsuits, humanitarian groups, nonprofits, and other organizations that rely on this foreign aid sued the administration. They argued that the president's action was illegal and violated the constitutional principle of separation of powers, specifically Congress's power of the purse to control federal spending. The court decisions. The legal battle has gone through several phases. Initially, a U.S. district judge ruled that the administration's actions were likely illegal and ordered the funds to be released. This is the decision that we are referencing. However, a federal appeals court, specifically the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, reversed that decision. The appeals court did not rule on whether the cuts were constitutional. Instead, it ruled that the specific groups that had sued did not have the legal standing or cause of action to challenge the cuts. This legal victory for the administration allowed them to continue the cuts, at least temporarily. The larger significance, this case is a modern test of the separation of powers between executive and legislative branches in the U.S. government. The core issue is whether a president can unilaterally refuse to spend money that Congress has legally appropriated. The court's decision, while not final ruling on the constitutional question, has significant implications for how the president can manage federal funds for the ability of organizations to challenge such actions in court. Global Health Council v. Trump is a legal case that centers on constitutional principle of separation of powers and Congress's power of the purse. The lawsuit was filed by a group of global health and humanitarian organizations after the Trump administration froze billions of dollars in foreign aid that had been appropriated by Congress. The administration argued it had the authority to do so. The plaintiffs argued that the president's action was an illegal impoundment of funds. They claimed this violated the Constitution, which gives Congress the exclusive power to appropriate and spend money. They also argued that the action violated the Impoundment Control Act of 1974, a law passed to prevent the president from unilaterally withholding funds. A U.S. District Court judge sided with plaintiffs. The court issued a preliminary injunction ordering the administration to release the frozen funds, stating that the president cannot ignore a statutory mandate to spend funds simply because of policy objections. Appeals court ruling. A federal appeals court for the D.C. Circuit initially overturned the district court's decision, but not on the constitutional question. Instead, the court found that the plaintiffs did not have a legal cause of action to bring the lawsuit. This meant they could not sue the government over the cuts. However, the court later revised its opinion, creating a pathway for the organizations to pursue their claims under the Administrative Procedure Act, APA. The case has been a legal back and forth, but the latest district court decision again ordered the administration to release the funds, stating that the decision to withhold them was arbitrary and capricious. The case is likely to continue to be a test of the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. This case was filed by a specific group of organizations that were directly affected by foreign aid cuts. The plaintiffs included the Global Health Council, the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition, and several other nonprofit organizations and businesses. These organizations were suing on their own behalf to challenge the executive action that was directly impacting their funding and operations. The case was brought under the Administrative Procedure Act, APA, which allows parties harmed by an agency action to sue. Immigrant rights attorneys filed a preemptive lawsuit to block imminent deportations of Honduran children, arguing the government is attempting removals without giving the children meaningful access to asylum or counsel. This follows a recent court order halting some deportations over the Labor Day weekend. The administration has launched Medicaid spending probes in multiple Democratic-led states, targeting how state programs cover undocumented immigrants, a regulatory/legal pressure point that could remove benefits or shift costs for vulnerable populations. President Trump publicly threatened to deploy federal troops to U.S. cities. Portland explicitly named Chicago and New Orleans mentioned, and officials are actively discussing expanded federal law enforcement operations, a major escalation in the use or threat of federal forces against domestic populations. Donald Trump, the person who is supposed to be our president, made this post this morning on Truth Social, and it says, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago is about to find out why it's the Department of War." I don't think I'm the only person that is perceiving that as a threat of war. And I just want to say that, like, in American law for the United States, engaging in acts of war against the people is considered by definition to be treason. So I'm just stating facts, about what treason is. The public has to get educated to understand these things. So it's not good that Donald Trump is saying things like that, because that's what it looks like when you say stuff like that and you're the president of the United States and you're deploying the military in the way that is being done with our National Guard troops. That if that gets censored, that would be fucking ridiculous, because I'm just trying to discuss public affairs and we have every right to use the words that are in our vocabulary system. Thank you. Several governors are split over National Guard mobilizations. Georgia has announced it will send about 316 National Guard members to Washington, D.C. later this month to support ongoing security operations. An example of state-level troop movements inside U.S. borders tied to federal enforcement authorities. Watch for legal friction. Deploying Guard or federal troops outside Washington raises constitutional and statutory issues and political resistance when suggested for other cities. That debate is active at the state-federal level. Policy shifts and institutional power. The administration's Medicaid probes and enforcement actions targeting immigrant coverage represent a policy shift that could reduce access to health care for low-income residents in several states if enforced aggressively. A federal court's intervention to block the administration's foreign aid cuts underscores that major executive reallocations are being curtailed by the judiciary, limiting rapid administrative reassignments that can produce geopolitical and domestic ripple effects. The CDC is investigating a multi-state salmonella outbreak linked to certain home delivery meals. Metabolic meals, 16 illnesses across 10 states have been reported so far. Consumers should check refrigerators and freezers, stop eating affected products, and follow CDC guidance. Grid and infrastructure vulnerability remains an ongoing risk for consumers. Analysts and sector reports continue to flag risks of weather-driven outages and strains on electricity delivery that could mean localized blackouts during extreme weather. This remains a medium-term consumer risk to watch. Active outbreak. The CDC's salmonella investigation tied to home delivery meals is open and moving. 16 confirmed illnesses, hospitalizations reported, no deaths reported to date. Follow official CDC recall guidance if you use delivery meal services. Federal leadership changes and reported resignations at CDC leadership per professional advocacy updates have raised concern among health policy observers about continuity at the agency during outbreak response. Monitor CDC announcements for any operational changes. International relations. A U.S. appeals court order limiting unilateral foreign aid cuts constrains the administration's ability to redirect funds abroad. A judicial decision with immediate foreign policy implications. Reports in today's coverage also note discussions of military options and increased force posture in nearby territories, e.g. additional U.S. aircraft movements to Puerto Rico cited in reporting, which have regional diplomatic consequences if they move beyond training and assertion to operational deployments. Legal actions against the Trump administration. Multiple lawsuits and litigation trackers are showing ongoing legal challenges to administration policies across immigration enforcement and executive authority. Today's most consequential court action, an appeals court declined to let the administration proceed with major foreign aid cuts, reinforcing judicial limits on those executive actions. Advocacy groups also continue to file targeted suits, for example, to block deportations of children. The litigation landscape is active and fragmentary. Dozens of cases and emergency filings remain in motion. Here are the U.S. trade and economic highlights from the past 24 hours. Recession risks and jobs slow down. The August jobs report showed that only 22,000 jobs added, a sharp drop from 323,000 in December, putting recession odds to nearly 50%, according to analysts. Weakness spans manufacturing, construction, and public employment. As a result, markets now anticipate more aggressive interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve, which would be the stupidest thing you could possibly do. I'm done explaining it. I've been explaining this like every day. Rate cuts are a bad idea when nobody has any fucking money. Rates are for loans. If you have no money and you take out a loan, how the fuck are you going to pay it back? Rate cuts in a bad job market, probably not a good idea. Why people are like, oh yeah, more aggressive interest rate cuts. No, that's the opposite of what you should want to do in this situation. That's just my opinion. Based on my observations, is what I think and it's how I feel. So I'm just expressing my opinion on that. I think it's incredibly stupid to slash rate cuts when the economy is in the state that it's to slash interest rates when the economy is how it currently is. It just seems like a really bad idea. Erosion of economic credibility and data integrity. President Trump has fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS, commissioner following the weak jobs data and replaced her with a conservative economist from the Heritage Foundation, raising concerns over political interference. In economic data collection, experts caution such moves could damage public trust and data reliability. Conservative economist Doug Holtz-Eakin, once a Trump ally, sharply criticized the administration's economic approach, arguing tariffs, immigration crackdowns, and policy incoherence have harmed private sector hiring and overall economic stability. Consumer sentiment and economic mood. Pessimism is on the rise. A Wall Street Journal NORC poll found only 25% of Americans believe they can improve their standard of living, while about 70% doubt the American dream. Widespread fears over health care, education, housing affordability, and economic inequality are fueling consumer disillusionment. Trade policy. President Trump signed an executive order granting tariff exemptions for trade partners who agree to U.S. industrial export terms, eliminating duties starting Monday. This signals a strategic shift aimed at strengthening relations with compliant partners. This is according to the Times of India. However, in parallel talks, Japan confirmed that key directives on pharmaceuticals and semiconductor tariffs remain unsigned, leaving the broader U.S.-Japan trade agreement unsettled. Japan also plans a comprehensive analysis of the U.S. auto tariff changes and their impact on competitiveness. And remember, kids, the stock market is not the economy. Just because the Dow Jones or S&P 500 might be performing does not mean that jobs are secure, wages are growing, inflation is under control, or that people are thriving. And here is the upcoming hazardous weather outlook for the next few days. Northeast and mid-Atlantic, scattered severe thunderstorms are possible from eastern Pennsylvania through New Jersey into New England this afternoon and evening. Expect damaging wind gusts, isolated hail, and the possibility of a brief tornado. Tonight through Sunday, lingering showers and heavy rain will continue Sunday, especially around Long Island and the East End. Expect totals of 1 to 3 inches, with some spots seeing even higher amounts. Monday, forecast currently shows lower severe storm potential across the region, though instability may bring isolated showers. Monitor updates for any changes. Ohio and Tennessee valleys, slight risk of severe storms is present across the upper Ohio and Tennessee valleys. Storms may produce damaging winds, hail, and possibly a brief tornado or two, particularly during afternoon and evening hours. No widespread hazards currently forecast, but localized storms may develop. Keep an eye on local advisories. Monsoonal moisture is heading northward, bringing a risk of heavy downpours and localized flash flooding across eastern Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Utah and Colorado. Localized flood-prone areas are particularly at risk. Storms are expected to become more scattered and isolated, fewer widespread threats, but remain prepared for sudden downpours, especially in mountainous or canyon regions. Southeast, Midwest, West Coast, Northwest, and Plains, no active severe weather threats have been noted for these regions over the next 3 days, according to current NWS outlooks and WPC Day 3 to 7 hazard maps. However, always stay alert for updates and changes, especially during transitional weather patterns. And here are the top international news highlights for the past 24 hours. South Korea speaks out after mass arrests. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has launched a diplomatic and legal support effort to assist hundreds of South Korean citizens detained during a U.S. immigration raid at a Hyundai battery plant. Northern lights may illuminate tonight's sky. Auroras could become visible across wider regions tonight thanks to solar activity from a coronal hole now aimed at Earth, potentially lighting up night skies across northern latitudes. Escalating death toll in Gaza amid ongoing crisis. In the last 24 hours, at least 68 Palestinians have been killed and over 360 injured in the Gaza Strip amid the intensifying conflict. Starvation and attacks on rescue workers continue to worsen the humanitarian situation. Mystery drone falls in eastern Poland. An unidentified object suspected to be a drone crashed near Majdan Silik. Mystery drone falls in eastern Poland. An unidentified object suspected to be a drone crashed near Majdan Silik village in eastern Poland. Authorities are investigating the incident amid concerns over airspace security amid regional tensions. Portuguese city mourns streetcar tragedy victims in Lisbon. 16 people died in a tragic streetcar derailment. Colleagues, friends, and city residents are now paying their respects in somber memorials across the city. Iran paves over mass grave from 1979 repression. In Tehran, authorities have paved over a section of the city's largest cemetery, known to contain mass graves of victims executed after the 1979 Islamic Revolution, raising concerns among human rights observers. That's just disgusting, dude. That's just gross. That's fucked up. That concludes the news for today. We'll see you around. Be safe out there.
So the Olympics is great. And Johnny, for the others, you know, the World Cup, Johnny is the head of it. We had our top people, Wasserman. They all came in on the Olympics, and then I saw Johnny. And we got the World Cup too. And you know, it's only because they rigged the election that I'll be your president representing you there. You know, I got both of them. I got the Olympics and I got the World Cup. And I said, you know, it's too bad. One was in 2026 and the other was in 2028. And I said, I won't be there. I won't be your president. But then they rigged the election and now we won. So I'm going to be your president for the Olympics and for the World Cup. So, Johnny, thank you for the World Cup. And everybody, thank you for the Olympics. We're going to have a great time.
Hey guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment on my videos. And also, don't forget to check out my shop where you can get this awesome Real Patriots Punch Nazis t-shirt. America, fuck yeah! And if you go to the link tree in my bio on most platforms, it's got links to everything, all of my stuff. You can find my shop there. I'm on eBay. You can also get this cool Exterminate MAGA sticker, cause MAGA's fucking cockroaches. And fuck MAGA, abolish MAGA, fuck you MAGA.